literally, whether it's the book one of the Iliad, to for a shared audience experience, to be immersed in a sense of reality, a reality that would make you experience emotion, psychological impact, all of this. And I think there's always been, from the very beginning, even the cave paintings with the legs of the bison. That's you know, the bison is sort of running animated legs with the right amount of flame in front of it, and maybe the right ingestion or whatever they were taking at the time. Those bison are going to move. It's a moving picture, you know. And they were trying for this experience of movement, I do think that, and I think ultimately, I talk about the frescoes, like Giotto's frescoes of St. Francis in Assisi. They're films. In a way, they are films. He would have made a film. He would have been more like Bresson. Michelangelo, you know, it's different.
Well, I think one of the issues too for me, and the interesting thing about the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and coming from spending a lot of time in contemporary and modern museums, is that maybe that sense of the Museum of Modern Art, or the Centre Pompidou, these great modern museums that have always taken film, and it's assumed it's part of our 20th century culture. It's part of the Industrial Revolution, it's part of photography. But I guess, for me, the opportunity here is that a lot of what film is about includes this question of narrative and the structure of narratives that are, I mean, whether they're ancient narratives, it's tragedy, it's comedy, and it seems like a lot of what's in this museum is a lot of that issues of narrative. And so, for me, I guess the opportunity I sense in Los Angeles for the LA County Museum of Art for film is to put it in the broad context of all of art history. There's hardly a museum that deals with all of art history that can give film that.
Yes, I agree with you. And we were talking earlier about Picasso and Braque attending movie theaters in Paris, and leading to a certain extent leading to Cubism. You can see many of the paintings do appear to have been influenced by projectors themselves. Projectors, you know. So this is something that's that the nature of cinema itself. I think it's been difficult in the past 80 years, 90 years to accept it that way, because it wasn't made as an entertainment. It was made as a popular art form. It's just, you know, the Nickelodeon, or, you know, naturally a real film, and then after it was shown, there was no other place to show it, they burned it up to get the silver out of the nitrate. You know, so it
as bronze becomes cannonballs.
As bronze becomes cannonballs, yeah. And so it's always had that stigma, I think, of being an art for the masses in a way. But yet, it has been so influential, and it's so natural to come out of painting and photography. It simply has. But add sound to that, there's music, it's color, it's movement, it's dance.
Right, and from a director's perspective, though, I mean, it's entertainment, but you think about painting. I mean, you look at film, I always make a point, you can see late 19th century American painting and the interest in landscape and the scale of those paintings. And then you look in the early 20th century and you think, well, they stopped making those paintings. Why? And I think the answer is because John Ford was...
Well, John Ford and King Vidor.
Yeah,
King Vidor.
Look at that to the screen.
Yeah, there's a little film that Andrew Wyatt fell madly, became obsessed with the big parade. There's a scene at the end where, I think it's John Gilbert, I forget the actor, sorry. Yeah, he comes home, he's got one leg, and he's on the hill, and he kept painting that hill. And there's a 16mm film made in the 70s where Vito goes to visit Andrew Wyatt. And it's quite something, and just image after image of that hill. He was obsessed with that hill. Francis Bacon, the image of Potemkin. You know, we don't know how these images affect people. We don't know, you know, where it's going, what result it will have in a different art form too. But when you do add color, and when you do, I should say, to painting and photography, you add sound, and then you have music and you have dance. And even without sound, the editing of a film is music. It's simply music. You have to have a sense of music. And whether it's a long take that goes on for 20 minutes, or it's a series of cuts that last 2 to 3 frames, you have to feel it musically. And that's a great editor, and some directors do it. It's really, really good.
You said something once when you were talking about editing and sort of being unsure yourself. Are you making an artwork, or are you making entertainment? And you said something about feeling that how a cut could have an ethic, could have a meaning constructed in a visual form that didn't exist in painting or any other form.
I think so. There's no doubt. I think that you take one image and you cut it to another image. And the first image by itself has one meaning. The second image by itself has another meaning. When you put the two together, it creates something else in your mind. It simply creates something. And in some people, it doesn't reflect at all. They don't think about it at all. It doesn't hit them. But it's like watching a film. Let's say I came very late to appreciate the films of Frank Borzage. You know, maybe till I turned 50. Then I understood about his idea of love in the films, and I suddenly, it was like a revelation, and it was a joy because then I had 50 more films I could see. But it took me a long time, but prior to that I tried, it was going way past me. I just couldn't do it. My energy level was a different way. But there is definitely something that happens on the cut, or on a move, the camera move. Take a look at the camera moves in Love and Tour, or in Blow, even, in the photography session, where he has the camera just, there's nothing that says the 1960s fashion more, I think, than that image of the camera is parallel tracking along the screens and reveals the models frozen. I've seen it recently, it's stunning. It has such authority, and it has such a, it's a comment on that work too. It's a comment on our work, and it's pretty strong, it still holds up. But there is another element that enters, that cinema creates in your mind, and it's amazing sometimes how a full audience gets it, you know?